In the eyes of an international fan, Benfica is a financially stable club that constantly produces wonderkids while also remaining somewhat competitive in the Champions League. I get why most fans see them that way. After all, the biggest names a club produces will always outshine the flops that end up forgotten just a few years after their initial hype. But what if I told you that Benfica is in serious trouble? In fact, what if I told you that one of their biggest club legends is actually the one running the club into the ground? In this video, we'll take a deep look into Benfica's misleading success story, peeling back the layers of a club that on the surface looks like a model of financial stability and talent production, but behind the scenes is hiding many secrets from their rivals and their own supporters. But first, let me give you some context. Benfica is by far the most popular club in Portugal, having reached that extreme level of popularity due to their historical success, particularly during the 50s and 60s. Contrary to FC Porto, which tends to have more regional support, and Sporting CP, which is mostly associated with upper-class individuals, Benfica has always been branded as the working-class club, not only in Lisbon, but in the entire country. So it's not an exaggeration when I say that they receive almost as much attention and scrutiny as Portugal's national team. As a consequence, as a Portuguese football fan, I'm always going to receive way more info than an international fan on this matter, and trust me when I tell you, things are not looking good for Benfica. From 2014 until 2019, the Eagles lived a wonderful period where they won 5 out of 6 league titles. This was seen by many as their return to the summit of Portuguese football after losing their grip on the sport after the 1980s. Furthermore, they also received a lot of money from sponsorship deals, like the one made with Emirates that dates back to 2015, as well as their TV rights sale to NOS, which was worth around 400 million euros. Benfica made some serious money during this period. With their frequent Champions League presences, Benfica amassed around 150 to 200 million euros from that tournament, which isn't more than what Porto earned, but it was definitely more than what Sporting totaled. Besides, Benfica was far more successful in the market than the Dragons, making many substantial sales like João Félix to Athletic for 126 million, Ederson for 40 million, Witsel also for 40 million, and many other good deals. Porto, on the other hand, without any significant sporting success during that period, was incapable of outpacing the rivals' momentum in the market like they did during the 2000s. They also invested a lot in underachieving talent during Julen Lopetegui's tenure, which put the club in massive debt. To make matters worse, ever since Conceição took over in 2017, Porto became too attached to their players, unwilling to sell them before their contracts expired, which wasted a lot of money from potential sales. In the same period, Sporting was going through a massive crisis. Although the club was financially stable, the Lions were going through internal issues like never before. A group of fans invaded the training ground and beat up the players, their president had just been banned from the club, and the little improvement they had shown from 2014 to 2016 had quickly dissipated. So, why didn't Benfica embark on a dominating run like Bayern or Juve did in their countries? Well, because Benfica is simply run by incompetent people. In the 2017-18 season, Benfica had a once-in-a-lifetime chance to win their 5th consecutive league title, something that only Porto was able to achieve. And what does Benfica do? They completely destroy the squad that had dominated Portuguese football for the past 4 years. Ederson, gone, and as a replacement, Benfica brings Bruno Varela back, a guy who compromised the club several times throughout the year. In defense, Benfica got rid of Lindelof and demanded that a 20-year-old Ruben Dias stepped up since the other alternatives were two banged-up players about to retire. They also got rid of Nelson Semedo, and in exchange, they brought in one of Barcelona's worst flops of the 2010s in Douglas. To cap it all off, Benfica also sold their top goal scorer from 2016-17, Kostas Mitroglou, even though they knew their other striker Jonas was playing on borrowed time. In my opinion, Benfica took their 5th league title for granted. They saw that Sporting was becoming more and more unstable, while Porto was entering a rebuild year, having made no significant signings. It was their golden opportunity to cash in on the remarkable work made by their former coach Jorge Jesus, but in the process, they lost the edge over their rivals, and 6 years later, they clearly haven't gotten it back. And that's the thing that bothers me the most about Benfica. They always focus on cashing in, no matter what, and no matter how. I get that Portuguese clubs need to sell to remain competitive, but the way Benfica goes about their business is simply short-sighted. Not only do they sell their gems way too early, but they also burn the players in the process. I mean, it's pretty cool to go on transfer market and see all these lists claiming Benfica are one of the best sellers in Europe, and that's completely true. But think about what happened to those players. João Felix, perhaps the biggest flop of the current decade. Renato Sanches, his career is already over and he hasn't even reached 30. Lindelof, Semedo, Núñez, Jimenez, all of them have disappointed in one way or another. Obviously, there are also many successful departures. Di Maria, Fábio Coentrão, Ederson, Ruben Dias, but what do those names have in common? Their transfers weren't rushed. They all had time to mature, to become leaders in the club, and they only left for clubs that actually made sense for them to join. For example, Ederson, as one of the best distributors, would make sense to play in a team like Man City that builds their play from the back. Felix, on the other hand, as a creative forward with a low defensive work rate, would never fit in a Simeone-type system. But all of this wouldn't be a problem if Benfica knew how to buy players effectively. Again, I don't expect you to know about all the players that join Benfica, but some of them come in for ridiculously high fees for our context and end up flopping. But I get it, like, who the f cares about players that can even thrive in the Portuguese league? However, if we want to make a reasonable claim, we have to be aware of all the facts. And the fact of the matter is that Benfica spends way more than what these Instagram posts might lead you to believe. In 2018, they spent almost 10 million euros on a midfielder that generated no profit and only played well for half a season. 1 year later, they splurged 40 million euros divided between two players that never achieved anything with a Benfica shirt. In 2020-21, things got even crazier. The Eagles wasted over 60 million euros on complete and utter flops. From 2022 onwards, Benfica would start a new trend with PSG, where the Eagles would receive former Parisians who couldn't stay fit for more than a few matches, while also paying a big portion of their inflated wages. I'm talking about Julian Draxler, Juan Bernat, and most recently Renato Sanches. And honest to God, I know this might sound like a joke, but the guy is already injured after only 64 minutes of action, and he's supposed to be João Neves' replacement. Still, I get what some of you might be thinking. Benfica usually gets their money back from their flop transfers. Raul de Tomás left for more than what the club paid for him, Lucas Verissimo as well, and many other players like Pedrinho or Castinho left almost for the exact same amount they were bought for. Besides, the money they received far outweighs the money they spent. Except that it doesn't. For every big money sale coming out of Portugal's league, the infamous Jorge Mendes will always find a way to get a percentage for himself. There are many hidden fees around the transfer that massively decrease the profit Benfica will be able to get from a player. I'm not saying that Benfica is the only club to go through it, but since they aren't transparent with their associates, I feel the need to burst the bubble for some of you. And just like Benfica didn't even get a vast portion of the 126 million euros from Felix transfer, they also spend way more than what you think on supposed cheap veteran talent like Vertonghen or Otamendi. Wages, sign-on fees, agent percentages, they all add up. And it certainly doesn't help that Benfica is currently so poorly run under Rui Costa. He didn't fire Roger Schmidt at the end of the previous season because he believes the project needs continuity, even though it was clear to everyone that Benfica's only dominant period under the German manager happened because of the brilliance of Enzo Fernandes. After he left, Benfica almost squandered a 10-point lead in the league and never returned to their best form, even losing 5-0 against one of the worst Porto sides of the 21st century. Rui Costa also forced Di Maria's contract renewal when the Argentine is no longer able to justify his high salary on the pitch. As a consequence, Rui Costa couldn't meet João Neves' contractual demands, so he sold him to PSG for half of his release clause. I already know that many Benfica fans might see this video as blatant hate from a rival, but this is far from it. I could use many proven corruption scandals to stain Benfica's iconic four-pit, and I'm not doing it because corruption isn't synonymous with a single giant in Portugal. I just wish Benfica fans would wake up and demand more from their president. Do not let his historical past fool you into thinking he wants the best for Benfica. If Rui Costa wasn't full of shit, he would have left the club when he realized that the previous president, Luís Filipe Vieira, was financially arming the club. So, Rui Costa was either powerless in the club and used only as a marketing tool, therefore he has no business being president, or he was indeed familiar with Luís Filipe Vieira's shady tactics and he simply ignored them, making him as corrupt as the previous president. Either way, Benfica needs a wake-up call, a new beginning just like Porto had to go through this season. The Eagles are still in much better shape than the Dragons from a financial point of view, but if they continue to fail in the market, I don't know what the future might hold for Sport Lisboa Benfica. To quickly wrap it up, apologies for my voice, and thanks to all of you who always watch Throne FC, and to the Portuguese fans who might be coming across this video, please remember that we need to stay united. It's completely okay to domestically root against your rival, but if we want to improve our country's football, we need every club to do well. I think we're slowly entering a new era of respect between the giants, and I honestly hope it's something that sticks rather than a passing fad. Once again, thanks for watching until the end, I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one.